This presentation gives a brief overview of my thesis titled A Home Deferred: The Future Homeland Security Implications of Reverse Dreamers. This thesis provides a brief overview of my research on the plight of U.S. citizen minors, or reverse dreamers, who are currently under the radar of both U.S. and Mexican government authorities. It is important to provide a definition for the term reverse dreamer. This thesis coins the term reverse dreamers to refer to minors who are U.S. citizens currently living in Mexico, but who spent their formative years in the United States. My research question is, what are the social, personal, psychological, political, and ethical implications of reverse dreamers, and what policies might mitigate associated challenges? As I researched this topic, I encountered more questions than answers. In the last decade, there has been a surge of Mexican nationals in the United States who decided to return to their home country. This return migration was attributed first to the 2008 recession and then to the more recent, end quote, tightening of U.S. borders, surveillance, deportation, and problems with permanent residency applications, end quote. Further research suggested that many of these Mexican citizens brought their American-born children with them back to Mexico. These U.S. citizens are living in a state of documentation limbo while trying to adjust to their new lives in Mexico. I also encountered many unknowns, challenges, and gaps as I continued my research. As reverse dreamers continued to fall under the radar, there was little publicly available information about them. On both sides of the border, information remained scattered and difficult to obtain, and the majority of the primary sources I found were written in Spanish. The dearth of information about the struggles of this population highlights the obstacles they face as they transition from the United States to Mexico. Many young reverse dreamers often expressed a strong desire to return to the United States, and they are understandably unaware of the challenges they will face upon repatriation. These insights also shed light on an important issue for the U.S. government. The country is underprepared for their return. Considering reverse dreamers' legislative concerns, disadvantages, aspirations of returning to the United States, and sense of lost nationhood, reverse dreamers represent a diaspora of U.S. citizen minors with seemingly no advocacy. The U.S. and Mexican governments need to prioritize and officially track how many U.S.-born children are in Mexico. My research design comprised of 4 buckets to include limitations, demographic research, signals analysis, and scenario planning and fictional narratives. These 4 categories demonstrate the phenomenon of reverse dreamers by employing a futures methodology combined with scenario planning and fictional yet realistic narratives. Using the minimal demographic research available and signals analysis, I developed 3 fictional narratives to identify trends and tendencies in the reverse dreamer's experience. These narratives bring to life a fictional character named Daniel, who, as a boy, is forced to move from his home in the United States to a new one in Mexico. The narratives provide a canvas on which to paint the likely experience of a reverse dreamer today in the year 2020, a near-casting of such a dreamer's reintegration in 13 years, and a parallel near-casting of the challenges for government agencies when an unanticipated influx of reverse dreamers return to an underprepared United States in the year 2033. In 2016, Roberta Jacobson, former U.S. ambassador to Mexico, estimated that there were approximately 600,000 U.S.-born children under 18 years of age living in Mexico. As of January 2019, other sources claim that approximately 3% of all students between kindergarten and the 12th grade enrolled in Mexican schools are U.S. citizens. These newer estimates suggest a child population 33.3% larger than Jacobson's estimation in 2016. Extrapolating these figures to 2020, an estimated 960,000 U.S.-born minors are likely enrolled in Mexican schools. Given these conservative numbers, and with recent increases in deportation, the population of U.S.-born children living in Mexico could be even higher. Although the U.S. government does not track how many U.S.-born children reside in Mexico, Mexican authorities anticipate that these numbers will continue to rise. My primary findings were alarming. Unlike their parents, when reverse dreamers leave the United States, they are leaving the only home they know. Their transition to a life in Mexico includes complete immersion into a new language, culture, and identity. As they adapt, their cultural, linguistic, social, emotional, and academic obstacles multiply. Data gathered by the Mexican schools and acknowledged by U.S. consulates have determined that the majority of reverse dreamers lack resources and live in a state of poverty. Throughout their lives, their social and emotional obstacles, coupled with the lost nationhood that occurred in childhood, can go undetected. They face other challenges too, including invalid documentation, educational displacement, and potential failure to complete civic duties. Without proper identification, either Mexican or American, they cannot enroll in school or access health and social services. A lack of identification continues to place reverse dreamers in a status limbo, and they have few advocates from within their own families, communities, or countries. My secondary findings included trying to define the U.S. government's role and responsibilities in supporting U.S. citizen minors residing abroad. As reverse dreamers mature into adults, the bureaucratic hoops they have to jump through will only continue to compound. Logistical challenges such as inconsistent and invalid documentation, educational displacement, language barriers, and social, emotional, and identity issues will continue to give these reverse dreamers a mixed sense of American community and rejection from their birth country. The repatriation to the United States no doubt includes fulfilling civic responsibilities, like registering with the Selective Service System, paying taxes, and accessing federal programs, to name a few. Integration and assimilation efforts between Mexico and the United States can help identify the needs of reverse dreamers before they become adults. As reverse dreamers begin to emerge from their camouflage state, the United States has opportunities to help them before their challenges become unmanageable. For instance, the United States can create a special consular unit at the U.S. Embassy in Mexico that focuses solely on documentation for reverse dreamers. This unit would also be responsible for developing a national reverse dreamer strategy, a planning document that would advocate for reverse dreamers by documenting U.S. citizens who move abroad. A coordinated effort between U.S. states and embassies to authenticate American birth certificates would help to prove reverse dreamers' U.S. citizenship. The United States would need to work as well with the Mexican National Population and Housing Census and advocacy groups to officially record the population of reverse dreamers in Mexico. These efforts can be lessened, however, if the Department of Homeland Security expands the U.S.-Mexico Entry-Exit Data Sharing Initiative. These recommendations require a tremendous amount of resources and collaboration between the United States and Mexico, but these efforts will create a great investment for the future leaders of the United States. The U.S. and Mexican governments need to prioritize and officially track how many U.S.-born children are in Mexico. The current estimated population of reverse dreamers living in Mexico is around the total population of the state of Delaware. Preparing these U.S.-born children for a successful future starts now, with better documentation processes and consular assistance. Tracking and assessing their existence through documentation, as well as through academic and social adaptation programs, will allow both the United States and Mexico to better prepare for the future of these U.S.-Mexican residents. Throughout my research, this thesis uncovered additional Homeland Security questions. While this thesis focuses on U.S.-born Mexicans, the research applies to all reverse dreamers who live in the shadows of other Latin American countries and Asia. Proactive Homeland Security measures will help us see the long-term importance of preventing terrorism, gang affiliation, crime, fraud, and economic drain among citizens who are most vulnerable. The solution to the challenges facing reverse dreamers is not isolated to one country. It must be seen as a shared vision for a brighter future.